Shaykh Ammar is a leading Shaykh Imam in the Trafford area. He's been at the forefront of delivering food and PPE to local hospitals and beyond from his centre in the Trafford borough.
Assalamu alaikum to everyone, and good evening, Andy, as well. Nice to have you here.
Assalamu alaikum. No, thank you very much.
I appreciate the time you're offering us. My question on the back of Jahangir's question on a more national level: when is there going to be a inquiry into Islamophobia in the political parties, and more specifically the Labour Party at the back of the report that was recently published, where a large number of members of the Labour Party are not convinced and not satisfied with the way Islamophobia has been tackled and handled within the party. Yeah. So when is this going to be taken on a more serious level and taken seriously in terms of Islamophobia in the political parties generally, and more specifically Labour Party? Yeah. And just branching off Jahangir's question regarding the France issue, there's a concern on the lack of voice raised from political figures within the national level regarding issues that are taken abroad. So, for example, the France issue, which was, in itself was an attack on Islam. Why is there a lack of voice being raised from political figures within the UK on a government level regarding these issues in representing the Muslim community, which is a large community within the country?
Thank you. Thanks, Ammar. So on the first question, I wouldn't want to give you an answer that's in any way glib or incorrect in any way. But I think the Labour Party are looking at an inquiry into Islamophobia. And I need to just double check that and confirm that. But I think there is a proposal for an inquiry, because the first thing that I kind of thought when I saw your question was, it's wrong to believe that anti-Semitism is only in the Labour Party. It's probably in all political parties to one degree or another. And it's also wrong to think that Islamophobia is only in the Conservative Party. But that's sometimes how the national political debate plays out. And it's not true. I think you'll find all forms of discrimination and hate are probably in all of the political parties in one way or another. And some of it may be kind of lack of understanding, knowledge, care in terms of the way people express themselves. But nevertheless, political parties can't allow any room at all. And I think we've found in our case, we've allowed far too much room for hate and discrimination to exist, and there's big learning points, I think, that come from that EHRC report. But I think the one thing I would say about it is people have got to stop on both sides of politics down there, particularly down in Westminster. Stop politicizing it one against the other. You've all got a problem. Instead of all deal with it and all work with the EHRC to deal with it, to get the required levels of confidence in all of the different communities. And I think it is disappointing how politicized the whole thing has become. I think it needs to be stepped down from that territory and dealt with in a much more forensic, open, honest way, and not so defensively. It's just way too defensive at the moment. So, but if I'm wrong, because there's been a few issues raised tonight that we will hopefully pick up and then come back to Nazir to sort of send some answers around. I think there's plans for an internal inquiry. Now, whether that will give you the required confidence, given the way they've dealt with anti-Semitism, is a different matter. But it's. I think there is an acknowledgement that there is an issue, and I think there's no kind of attempt to sort of brush it away. So there's no issue. There is an issue, and it needs to be dealt with. I would say as independently as possible. But we'll come back to you with an answer on that, Ammar. On the France issue, I mean, I don't know if people have spoken out at all. Are you saying? I mean, all I noticed, I remember hearing it on the radio last week, some of what was coming out of France following those recent events, and was a bit, because the thought of that happening here would be kind of not something that you could ever imagine, really. So I don't know whether, are you saying that no politician has spoken out on it? I mean, because obviously
I've not come across anything on a national level where politicians or the government have spoken out against France or spoken about what France have said. And the issue is, it's in twofolds. One is the lack of voice being raised Second, which leads on to what Jahangir talked about, what you alluded to as well, is the lack of voice from this government almost gives us a sense of fear that maybe they agree with this, and tomorrow this government could take that step, and there's no one's going to speak out against it. Because if the neighboring country's done it, and Europe generally, it's quite well bonded, so it gets along, it does things in together. So if France has done it, and no one's spoken out against France, who's to stop UK, making these comments, or Boris Johnson or anyone else making these comments tomorrow, and then naturally, okay, no one's going to speak out against it as well.
Yeah, no, I remember, because obviously we've often been in a very different position to France on things, on the burqa or hijab, and we've kind of, I remember when we were in government, we did speak out again, not everybody, because I think some ministers sometimes agreed with some of what was being said, but generally I think there's always been a bit of a clash between the French view of things and the British view of things. I think there's a much more, kind of reluctance here to get into, whereas France doesn't have that reluctance, does it, to sort of tread into this territory. Yeah, I will check now. I don't know, I will relay your concern to the shadow front bench, because that's where we would expect the Labour Party to be addressing this. So I will take away the concern. It's important. I learned that, as I said, after in this role, it's not so much just not to say something. Sometimes in my role, you need to say it and say it again, just to make sure that, because the failure to say things sometimes creates a permission, doesn't it? A sort of or leaves a vacuum that people who wish to perpetrate hate will exploit. You're making a fair point, and now you say it, I can't remember any commentary about it.